Welcome to the brand new Truth and Legend podcast. It's a podcast that we've been talking about for quite a while, and it's my partners in crime, Brandon Day, coming to us from where, Brandon?
I'm in Denver right now,
Denver, Colorado.
Colorado.
And then we got Eric Youngblood coming to us from where, Eric?
I'm at home here in Anchorage, Alaska.
Ankle Ridge. And I'm in Anchorage as well. Actually, Eric and I have been out shooting a lot this summer. So we are working collectively on this YouTube channel. And we've been talking about it for how long, guys? A year and a half?
At least.
Yeah.
Forever. And we haven't had a chance yet to get it all put together. But we thought having a companion podcast to work with the YouTube channel would be kind of cool. Brandon and I have both participated on the Wild and Exposed podcast, and this isn't intended to replace that. That'll still go on. At some point, we've taken the summer off, but I think it'll come back. This one is intended to be a companion to our YouTube stuff, and where I guess what it'll do is maybe some behind the scenes, and we can talk about the creating of these YouTube videos once we get the ball rolling. So that's where it all started. I think it's going to end up being a lot like the Wild and Exposed podcast, but we won't necessarily talk about wildlife all the time. Maybe just 95% of the time, and the other 5% will be all the other commercial work that we do that actually pays all the bills. Anybody have anything to add to that?
I think you got it.
The three of us presenting as kind of living our lives through us chasing the, full-time career in this sort of work, video work, other than just kind of hobbyist photography, which is still enjoyable, and hobbies of our own, kind of give you guys some ideas of what we're working on and working through problem-wise and equipment, techniques, and that sort of thing.
Well, what we probably should do, especially with you, Eric, is do like a background. Because both of you guys come from very corporate-y backgrounds, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's like a whole nother life, and this is a whole new lifestyle. So, and I'll do it too, just because there'll be listeners that have no clue about any of the three of us. But if we're getting crossover listeners, then some of them will at least know my background. But why don't you start us off, Eric, and just let everybody know who you are, what you do, how you got here, and why you're sitting in that seat talking to everybody.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and after college, I went to school for pharmacy. I've worked as a pharmacist for the last 15 years, and moved from Ohio to Alaska in 2009 just to chase, the outdoor adventure, wildlife, that sort of thing. Purchased my first, mirrorless camera for that move for the road trip, and then immediately bought bigger lenses, bigger gear within that first 6 months. Probably the first trip to Denali, pretty much sold it like, all right, I'm going to have to get serious with this. I've mainly just been enjoying photography as a hobby up until the last, year or so, really thinking seriously about how can I change careers and find a way to get by in the wildlife space, mainly because that's what I enjoy the most. So a couple months ago, I left my job, so I had some time, during the peak of this season, with the moose and bears, to really focus on that. And I met Michael a few years ago, probably 3 years or so now, and kind of got the ball rolling with video and thinking maybe I should do something a little more than just going out and taking pictures. Started shooting some video, didn't really know what to do with it or how to handle it or anything. By the time the Sony A1 came out and I was shooting 10-bit video, then I realized, I can't even edit that in the free software I'm using. So going through that learning curve and now feeling fairly confident in the equipment and the skills. We're going to make a run for this full time. So I'm joined in here, first podcast, first time trying to make a living on something other than pharmacy, and very excited to loving every day, getting out there, putting in, 4 to 8 mile hikes. Found out my camera bag is well over 50 pounds now. that we're carrying, and but I could not go sit back at my desk at work at this point.
So let me fill in a couple blanks there. So like Eric said, I did meet him 3 years ago. I don't know. I think we were actually on a moose. Is either
Yeah,
that or you have a Sprinter van too, and I was
it was the van was when I
googly
said
eyes
hi.
over your
Yeah.
Sprinter van in the parking lot or something. I think that was it. I think I saw you and I
Mhm.
was like, "Hey man, can I look in your van?"
Yep.
Not in a creepy way, but so fast forward to then we started shooting together a little bit whenever we happened to be in the same place, but he had a full-time job, so we'd see each other on weekends or whatever, and then it was getting to the point where I had a lot of jobs coming in that needed an assistant or needed someone to. I know what happened, Eric, was I got some camera traps for a
Yep.
job and I used them on that job, but when I showed back up in Alaska, you were playing with camera traps in your backyard because Eric lives on a place where I don't know, what do you have, a couple of acres, Eric?
Yeah, we have an acre, but there's 20 acres of kind of like a green belt that's surrounded by houses, so it's pretty much untouched with a nice creek that flows through. So it's a pretty good wildlife corridor.
So what he was doing was just setting up cameras in that back area. And then we got into, somehow I was like, hey, you should really learn how to use these camera traps, the real camera traps that aren't just a trail camera. And that way, if we get a job, I could just hire you on, but you're going to have to know these upside down and backwards and fix them and, all that jazz. Turns out we did get a job last year in Montana and he was able to get the time off of work to go do that. But then this summer, I ended up calling him 2 or 3 times. Hey, we need someone like tomorrow, or we need someone in 2 days. Can you do it? And, obviously that's just not enough time when you're in a real job to get the time off and do it. So it was at that point that he's like, you know what? It's never,
Yeah.
I mean, you can live your whole life working behind a desk. You might as well take a shot.
Yeah, I said I'm never going to be available if I keep working every day. So I think it was
Yeah. And I don't
next
know. I probably
day.
called you 5 times in the last
Yeah.
year, right?
There's been some opportunities that I just finally I couldn't do it anymore. It boiled over.
And then that's kind of like the same thing with Brandon. And Brandon, why don't you do your story and then we can pontificate on that afterwards?
Yeah. So my name's Brandon. I am a year into being a freelancer. Before that, I did 18 years in a corporate job. I was the head of a $5 billion market cap company, or I was the head of investor relations for a $5 billion market cap company. I just got tired of going to New York, Chicago, Toronto every quarter. And so we sold the company in August 22. And I said to my wife, Kristen, I said, look, I'm going to go be a full time photographer and videographer. And she was like, all right, let's do it. And so she was getting ready to go back to work and actually went and became a human resources rep, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't matter. She went into corporate and we kind of flipped roles. So now I'm a stay at home full time freelancer. And it's been nonstop since, well, actually, it was a little bit slow there. We did our camera traps earlier this year. And then late last year, Michael, we were trying to capture that mountain lion on GoPros, which we were unsuccessful in. We got it on the camera traps, but unsuccessful on the GoPros. And actually, there's a mountain lion that's been spotted a few times here locally. So I might
At your
go
house?
like just down in the Greenbelt, down by the South Platte. And so there's like 3 people that have seen it on different days. So I might go spend a few afternoons down there. But yeah, it's been crazy here the past few months. Just all corporate stuff. I haven't taken a, well, I took a photo of a hornet, a garter snake, and a falcon. So it's been slow on the wildlife front, but I can't complain.
Well, let me just fill in the blanks on how I met Brandon and how he got into this whole mix too. So last year we were doing the Wild and Exposed Bear Trip, and after Brandon quit his job, he actually was like, he got the okay from the family that to go do this bear trip, and I didn't know him at all. I
Yeah.
just knew there was some dude named Brandon coming on the bear trip. Met him on the boat, we got to be talking a lot about photography, a lot about where he was going, a lot about what he had done. And I'm like, this dude seems like he's got his head on straight, and it might be kind of fun to work together. So that's how that whole thing started. And then since I split time between Anchorage and Denver, whenever I'm in Denver, then Brandon and I do stuff together, and when I'm up here, then Eric and I do stuff together. So that kind of ties us all together. But Brandon has been on. I do a lot. So for my background, I would say the last 3 or 4 years has been mostly wildlife cinematographer for productions like BBC or production companies like the BBC Natural History Unit or Netflix or things like that. But prior to that, I did maybe half wildlife, and then the other half was corporate video production, which is awesome. Corporate video production is very well paying jobs and lots of work most of the time if you're out there marketing yourself. So since I took over more of the wildlife stuff over the last 3 or 4 years, I've kept a few of those corporate clients. And whenever they call us up, then I basically get Brandon and myself and one other guy, Travis, our editor, and we go do the corporate jobs. So we're still in that game, but I'm just not in there as much as I used to be.
And what was the last thing that came out publicly that you can talk about that you shot? Because there was a big one that I know about that maybe you can highlight.
So the latest one I think is a show called Big Beasts, and that's on Apple TV. And it's an episode that is actually on bears, but there's a sequence in there with moose, and that I shot all the moose stuff in that show.
And there's a fight, right?
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was awesome fight.
Eric and I are up here shooting moose right now because it's the season, it's the rut, it's that sort of thing, and it's just something that we do. But that fight that I shot for that particular show, I had shot it like 2 years ago, and I couldn't talk about it until the actual show came out. And it's amazing. But I've been doing this for like 4 or 5 or 6 years. I don't even know, maybe 6 years. And I've only shot that one fight. That's how rare they are. I mean, I think they happen all the time, but to be in the right place, the right time, and the right setting where you're going to actually be able to capture it is so infrequent that it was a pretty special day when we got that stuff. And it's actually pretty cool to see it in the sequence itself. Let's get back to the YouTube thing. Brandon came up with this idea earlier. What was it, like maybe a year ago this time? And he's
Probably
like, hey, we
close
should do
to
a whole YouTube video on 3 ways to use a GoPro. And that would be the obvious way, which would be just using it as an action cam, right? And then the second way would be underwater. And then the third way we were thinking would be, if you don't know anything about the GoPro, what do they call it? It's
called
it's like a
QR
beta
control.
software.
Yeah.
It's a beta software that's made by GoPro, and they have all kinds of cool little things in it. And it's a GoPro thing, so you're not putting some secondary software on your camera. You're putting GoPro software on your camera, but it allows you to use that camera as a camera trap. So Brandon and I thought, man, it'd be super cool to be, for the third way, you would use a GoPro as a camera trap for a predator, which is usually hard to get on camera. Just because you see a lot of these things on Planet Earth or any of these other shows where they show really cool shots of a Siberian tiger or cool shots of wolves or whatever that are really intimate shots. You're not going to get that close to a predator in a wild situation unless you're using camera traps. And so Brandon and I tried for 4 months?
Yeah,
We had
brutal.
picked out a spot west of Denver where we had private land. We could set up these camera traps, not worried about them getting stolen or messed with. And we were just using the GoPros because that was going to be our thing. We had built big battery boxes to run these cameras for 4 or 5 days at a time. And we'd go up every 4 or 5 days and change the batteries out. So I think we had to build how many? 6 battery
I think I have
boxes.
6 in my garage right now.
And we just basically used a car battery. And man, we tried hard. And this is a good place for mountain lions. I've actually filmed them there before with trail cameras. But man, and all the time we did it, we did get lions on the camera
twice,
but it was at night.
right?
And we actually had a trail camera next to our GoPros, and the trail camera would take a picture at night, but the GoPros don't work at night for a camera trap. So that whole thing has not been working out so well to get that video done because we never got the third way to do it. But if you fast forward to yesterday, so like I said before, we're doing moose right now. Eric and I are really hot and heavy, like trying to get cover the moose rut and get all the behavior. Well, moose do this thing called a rut pit, and it's a very interesting mating behavior. And what it is a male moose will dig a pit with his hooves, right? His front hooves, he's digging in the dirt and he's scouring up the soil. So it goes from vegetation to just basically raw dirt. He'll move over that dirt and pee in it just a little bit. Then he'll back off and he'll dig more. And he might do that 5 or 6 times. And then at a certain point, he'll move over the pit that he just keeps digging in and just totally unloads and just pees in it till he's out of pee, right? Then after that, he jumps back and he starts smacking his antlers in it. And what happens is that fires these cows off, and these cows are like, what is that noise? And then they can smell it. It smells like pine sol. It's just this, well, pine sol times 10, right? Or times 100. It's just this really pungent smell, but it's what gets the whole thing going in the hormones of these moose. So he does it, and then that brings the cows in. So the point to using a GoPro for something like that is it's a dangerous thing. You do not want to be close to how much do these moose weigh, Eric? It's probably 1,000 pounds,
Yeah,
1,200
a
pounds
little over, yeah.
on a big bull moose. We keep our distance. We shoot big long lenses, 60 to 600 sigmas on our cameras so that we don't have to get close to these moose. So I'm thinking, well, the only way I'm going to get any rut pit footage is to set up a GoPro and try to use that. So yesterday I had found this rut pit and I'm like, man, I don't know if they use them over and over, or is it one and done, or is it both? And I think it's both. So I think there'll be a historical rut pit, which is a place where many bulls over the years have scoured the earth, scoured the soil, done their thing. And I found something that kind of looked like that. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to set up a GoPro camera trap here and we'll let it set here for a couple of days and just see if we luck out. So yesterday I waltzed in there, set up that camera, and I was getting ready to leave. And I'm like, and Brandon and I had so many problems. I mean, half the time it worked and half the time it didn't. And it's not necessarily the camera's fault. It's
I
probably
don't
the nut
know.
behind the wheel,
I don't know. We had the same setting sometimes.
and it wouldn't work.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe
Yeah.
we
So
missed an update or something. I don't know.
I don't know. We tried everything and sometimes it'd work. Sometimes it wasn't going to work. So after I set it up, I walked away and I knew all the problems that we had had. So then I turned around and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go double check it one more time. I'm just going to go poke the screen and make sure it's on and maybe run my hand in front of it just to fire off the trigger and just see that the camera does come on. Before I got to that camera, I heard a moose
Oh,
because
awesome.
they make all these audible noises, right? So it's like a whine or a grunt. The males will grunt as they're moving, and the females will let out this little bitty whine, or sometimes it's a really loud whine, just saying, you know what, I'm not interested, or stay away right now. When they're ready to mate, they'll let the bulls know, but the bulls are ready to mate all the time, so they're constantly in pursuit.
It's much like the human race.
Yeah. So I heard this noise, and I'm like, oh no, I'm right here in the midst of this, and I probably shouldn't be. So I quickly retreated and I didn't even make it to the camera. I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. I can let these moose do whatever they're going to do, and then I'll come back and check it later. So we try to keep 50 yards between us and these moose at all times. Sometimes you can't do it because the trees are so close, and it's just, so in those situations, you get as far away as you can, and then you just protect yourself in amongst these trees. These moose are not after you, but you could certainly become collateral damage pretty easily if you're not paying attention. But they can't run through a big old tree. So as long as you're next to a tree or within the confines of 2 or 3 trees, you're probably pretty safe. So I'm sitting there and I look over and there's a little calf moose. There's a
no.
mama and a baby, a mama and a calf. And they come through. Mama is not interested in this rut pit at all, but somehow that little baby calf is like, huh, what's that smell? And it's smelling the trees and it's smelling all this stuff. And I'm watching it from a distance. And that little calf goes in and lays down in that rut pit. Now, it didn't get the behavior that I was after. It didn't get the whole digging of the pit or anything like that. It just got in there and it just laid down. And it kind of is, it's programmed into these animals that this is something that's used in the mating ritual. So I was like, well, holy moly, did that camera work? I hope it worked. I don't know. I couldn't see the camera to know if it turned on or not.
How cool.
Yeah, it was super cool. But then this little bitty bull comes in and runs that calf out. And I'm like, okay, now I got to go check the camera. But they didn't run far enough away for me to feel comfortable to go in there. So I'm just still sitting in the woods. I'm just sitting there waiting. I'm like, God, could it be that we actually got a shot right like 10 minutes after I set up the camera and all by accident or
Amazing.
all by serendipity? So I stayed off in the back or stayed away from the camera and I just kept watching. Well, those moose didn't leave. So this mama was not interested in these two little bulls at all, but she didn't leave the site. So I still couldn't go check. I could see these two bulls and they were clinking antlers, but I couldn't shoot any of this with my big camera because you're just in these tight confines with all the trees and stuff. But I'm sitting there watching it. And then I see mama and the baby just eating off to the side. And out of nowhere, the baby goes right back to the calf moose goes right back to the rut pit.
How interesting.
And yeah, lays in it again. And then mama actually walks over and she doesn't get in the rut pit, but she kind of is looking down at the baby who's laying in this pit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, hopefully that camera's still running. I don't know if it is or not, but if it is, this could be a gold mine, right? So then this bull moose comes up behind, is still in pursuit of this cow, this mama moose, and he pushes them out. Then he proceeds to get in the rut pit. And he dug it out a little bit. He didn't do, big digging. He just did a little bit, and then he laid right in it. And I'm like, mind blown kind of stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So how long has this been? So you're just using the little GoPro battery?
No. So we use V-mount batteries for all of our cameras. We all use them. And it has a little port for USB. So I had put that in there. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it's probably, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of action that's been in front of the camera, or maybe 20 minutes. I don't even know. Because it was all happening right in front of my eyes. And you know how when things are cool like that, time goes by like that. So finally, these moose move off. And I'm like dying to go look at this camera, but I'm still kind of leery because they'd moved off, but who knows where and how far. And so I waited a little bit longer. And after maybe another 30 minutes, I went over there. And I'm just totally expecting what you and I ended up with, Brandon. It's like, go look at the back of the camera and there's nothing, right? Nothing happened. Yeah. And I did. I flipped the little, you swipe up to look at the videos. I swiped up and I'm not seeing nothing. Then I try to hit the little icons that make it show all the different frames, the video that it shot, or all the different segments that it shot. And that wouldn't work because my fingers were too fat. So finally, I just started swiping, and sure enough, it captured everything.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool to be able to get all that. So now we can put our 3 ways to use a GoPro. And even though it's not a predator, it is a situation where you do not want to be there with the real camera trying to capture. It's just way too dangerous.
That is so cool. Okay, so walk me through the setup. So you used a V-mount, which is 100. Is that what you're using? 150, something like that?
A 150. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 150. So you're probably good for half a day?
We used these in Montana. Eric and I used them in Montana.
Yeah, we had these mounted on fence lines in Montana, and we would just use like a clamp or something to attach it to a post, and then just run a USB cable down into a Ziploc to keep the V-mount dry. And I think we had them 2-3 days in, and they were still running. So awesome. We're actually going to, after we record this, we're going to try and get back up there tonight. We got to at least grab that footage, and we'll double check the batteries. But yeah, I think we should still be rolling right now if we're.
So the camera's still deployed.
Yep.
Yeah, I left it there overnight.
Okay,
Just
risky.
in the yeah,
With
but
the
it's out
same
in the
with
middle of
the
nowhere.
but the memory card was left in the car. Like
Oh yeah,
what you just told
yeah.
us
I
is left
should
in
have.
the camera.
I should have
Yeah.
taken it out, but then I didn't want to
Okay.
mess. It was working, so I'm like, if I
Right.
mess with this and it doesn't work,
Right.
because we still haven't got the best shot. We still haven't got the big old bull that comes in and does this whole ritual. And when I first found that rut pit, the only way I found it is I heard him. He was stomping on the ground and digging, and then when he started smacking his antlers against this, what he's trying to do is just cover himself in the smell, which gets those females going. And when he's smacking that puddle of pee and dirt and with his antlers, it makes this really big smacking sound, and that's what brings the cows in. So we still haven't got that, and that's probably the main thing that we want to get. So that's why we left it there, and hopefully it's a historical pit that he'll use time and time again anytime he wants to get the attention of the cows.
Right.
So I basically took a Mayfair clamp,
Yep.
and then I had an arm. I was originally going to use a magic arm,
Yep.
but I had lent it to Eric the day before.
Okay.
So, and I didn't know if he was going to make it back out in the afternoon. He did, so we would have been fine. But I was like, oh, I just got to take some sort of clamp, because the other cool thing about that pit was there were some dead trees around it. Because when I do set up these camera traps, I do not alter anything in the forest. Like, I am not changing. I'm not breaking branches. I'm not trying to clear a path. I'm always looking for something that I can use without altering anything in the woods. So I just took this clamp and mounted it on a dead tree branch, a dead tree that had dead branches, mounted the clamp to that, and then underslung it, and then got it to where it kind of pointed in the right direction. And then I put the battery in a Ziploc and tied
Just
it to the branch. And
awesome. Now, did you do a new setting or did you use one of our old settings?
I was lazy. I actually forgot how to do it.
Oh, me too. I couldn't tell you the first. I'd have to go through each screen, and I'd
No,
have
I'm
to
like,
look up like what is what.
exactly. I'm
Yeah.
like, how does this work again?
Well, because I think there's 9 different screens of setup, right? Or 8 different. There's a lot of screens that you have to go through.
Yeah,
For
and you're
setting
only
this
really
up.
using a couple of different screens on it. You're using all the settings, so you can set your exposure value or compensator. You can set the maximum ISO and the minimum ISO. You can set the white balance. You can set what lens you want it to use, whether it's wide or linear or whatever. There's all kinds of settings. So you're definitely using that screen. And then the other screen that you're using is one called motion, and you're telling it based on what motion you want the camera to activate. Is it low sensitivity, high sensitivity? I can't remember all the other things, but basically all those settings produce a QR code. And once I saw that QR code, I'm like, aha, that's now I remember. So all you do is you have to preload this software on your camera, and it comes up in it. Your camera works as like a regular camera, no matter what. It doesn't mess with your camera at all. So you can put this software on your camera, on your GoPro, and I think it works with.
Well, actually, I have a funny story about that for a commercial shoot that we can touch on here in a second.
Okay. So I'm guessing it's probably 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 10, 11. I don't think 12s are
And it
out
works with
yet.
the Max,
It
the
works
old
with the
Max, not the
Max.
new one.
It works with all kinds of cameras. So you can load that on there. And then all you do is when you make these settings within the QR control software, which is put out by GoPro, it produces this QR code. And all you do is show the camera that QR code, and you'll see a little check mark come up on the screen as though it knows that it's got all these settings in it. Yeah, Brandon's showing it on his screen right now. So that QR code just gets shown, and once you're done, once you show it the camera it's live, it's ready to go.
Oh gosh. Well, I was going to ask you a few more. So,
Okay.
did you use ND while you're out there, or were you just letting it go clear and just let it auto?
So the cool thing in Alaska is it's cloudy all the time. So I went without.
Nice.
Because, you and I tried it with ND. We tried it without ND. I just felt like, it's cloudy enough. You can't really get the 180.
Right.
Because I tried the other day, I've been doing a lot of walking and talking for our YouTube videos with just a GoPro. And I went in and we're shooting at 24 frames a second. So I went in and set the shutter speed to 1/48, just to get that 180-degree rule going, just to make it more cinematic. And when I was walking and talking, even when it was cloudy, it was overexposed pretty bad. So it's not going to be like perfect. Like I could probably put like a 4, an ND4 on there or something, and it would probably be just right.
But it's probably cloudy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, and today's cloudy. Yesterday was cloudy. It's supposed to be cloudy for the next week.
awesome.
So I was like, it's probably better just to go with nothing.
And then GoPro 11 or your 8?
This is the 9.
Or the 9. Okay.
Yeah, I just bought an 11, and that's what I've been doing my walking and talking with.
Awesome.
But now that all happened, I'm like, I wish I'd had the 11 down there.
But it was still 4K, right? Like,
yeah, it's like
so you're
5K
good to go.
or whatever. So yeah, I think it'll be fine.
Awesome.
But we're gonna go pick it up this afternoon. But this to go where we're going is what is it, Eric? 2 miles in or 2.5 miles?
Yeah, it's a good 2 miles. 2 miles out there.
But how much elevation too?
It's stupid.
I don't know. It's not a ton.
It's like 1,000 feet, maybe both ways.
But it's just sloppy, muddy trail right now because it's been raining. Overnight it rains almost every day, and then it's either windy or breezy, and then just walking through slop.
Yeah, this trail is. I've never been on this trail when it's this muddy. It's like walking on ice skates. Gross. Or no, it's like walking on ice.
And are you guys in muck boots or are you doing hiking boots since it's so gross?
Eric and I are just doing hiking boots, and I'm wearing gaiters. Yeah. And then you just, it's just like ginger steps for at least half the trail. You have to gingerly walk so you don't bust your keister. And we're both carrying 50-pound packs. So, I mean, you don't really want to fall on your camera that's sitting in your pack either when you are packing your camera. I think today when we go back and check, I'm going to go light. I'm not even going to take my big camera. Yeah. I'm just going to take what we thought we'd do. The reason we want to go back there today is since we got it and we got the one angle, it might be kind of cool to set up a different camera on a lower angle or something a little different.
Yeah.
So that's probably the whole reason for going back.
Okay.
And to pull that card and put a new one in and get it to work.
Okay, so let's see, you guys have been doing moose now for a few weeks. What stage are they on? So it's middle of September right now. It's the 16th. Where are they at right now? So they play fighting. You're talking about a rut pit. So are they starting that or are they kind of midway through it? Because they're not to sparring yet, right?
Well, it's been a weird season, it seems. So there's only been really kind of one bull that's acting dominant. He kind of shed velvet early, and he's been kind of bossy, pushing all the small bulls around. He hasn't really seemed interested in sparring that I've seen, maybe a week or two ago. But yeah, there's not really any other bulls. We've been trying some different approaches, when the conditions aren't great, or we had been trying some different areas to see. I drove around Anchorage yesterday because the winds were so high in the morning, and I couldn't really find anything great in town. But yeah, it's.
Oh, really?
Historically, I think the heat of the rut is maybe yet to come, but maybe my inexperience with it all. But it just doesn't seem typical so far.
Yeah, it's definitely. So this place traditionally was an awesome place to film moose. And if you talk to the people that shot here 20, 30 years ago, they're like, oh yeah, you can walk up and down this valley and see 70 or 80 moose, which would have been awesome. But when I first started going there, maybe 6 years ago, there was always 3 or 4 dominant bulls up and down the valley. And you really had your choice. It's like, well, today, do I want to shoot up in the high alpine and get really pretty tundra fall colors, or do I want to go down low where it's a little grassier and more wooded? You really had your choice. But fast forward to this year, it's really so it was just a bunch of things kind of came together, and it's just gotten really bad. So several years, probably 3 or 4 years ago, they opened this place up to hunting. And prior to that, it wasn't hunted. And it's just a late season. I think they only give out 6 tags. And it's cat or antlerless. So it could be a bull that's lost its antlers and they could hunt that, or it's cows. So they've been doing that for 3 years, and you figure if it's halfway successful,
yep,
they could potentially have taken out a bunch of the cows. And then those 3 big dominant bulls that used to be there, none of them are back. One of them died last year in a fight.
Yep.
One of the other ones that was like a rock star up there, really pretty bull, pretty docile, and you could be your 30, 50 yards away, and he doesn't even pay attention to you. He must have been old age because he didn't show back up, and we
Maybe
all
a
kind of
winter
figured
kill.
that. Yeah, probably so. Because last year, the winter was pretty substantial up here. And then the other bull that used to be around, he usually shows up sometime like about now, from anywhere from early September to now, and he's not showed up. So it could be that he's just totally found another spot. We end up, I feel like I know a lot about moose, but every day we're out there and you see this behavior and you're thinking about how much worse it is this year, and there's just not the opportunities. So you're always second guessing everything, and you end up you can never answer all the questions that we come up with. It's like, wow, did it go to a different spot? Is there a spot another valley back that is the new rutting spot? And for us to go there with our stuff, we'd have to camp, and it'd be like a 7-mile trek in there, and you couldn't do in and out every day like we do with the 3.5 miles or 4 miles. So it's hard to say what's going on, but the stages of the rut, actually, we photograph a lot or film a lot with Moose Man Nature Photos. So it's Rick and Libby. They've been coming here for 7 or 8 years. And he's like a moose freak show, right? That's all he lives, eats, and breathes moose. So the other day, he and I were sitting on a glassing point, just using our binoculars to try to find moose just for intel, just like, oh, we might have a potential shoot possibility up in this spot or this spot. And while we were sitting there, I was like, you know what? This guy knows so much about moose. Let's just film a real quick impromptu stages of the rut video. So that one I got done. Eric colored it all. So that will probably be one of the first moose videos that we put on the YouTube channel. So if anybody's interested in that, just go watch. And he'll basically go through, or he does go through, the whole stage. So to answer your question, right now should be, so it starts out velvet, and all the moose are doing is eating, right? They're eating and growing antlers. So they eat, sleep, and that's about it.
Right.
You can identify the bulls. You can know that they're in these certain areas, but that's not probably where they're going to be during the rut. So then it moves from that to shedding the velvet, which means now they have hard antlers. The antlers have stopped growing, and they've become a weapon, but also, what would you call it? Something to impress the ladies, because these cows will look at these bulls, and of course they want to mate with the biggest, fittest, strongest bull that they can.
Right. It's part of the physique at that point. Yeah.
Exactly. So once that happens, at that stage, right after they've shed the velvet, if there's enough bulls in the area, they'll start clanking antlers, and it's more of just a sparring. It's not anything serious, and it's just almost even in slow motion. Then from there, you move into the rut pit stage. So these bulls are trying to gather a harem of cows, and you go into that. Then it's probably 2 weeks of that with the rut pits and cows and bulls all being in the same area. Then the females take over, and they're going to tell these bulls it's time. So then you go into that little stage, which doesn't last very long. All these
Right.
these cows get bred very quickly, and that's all by design, nature design, right? They all want to come out at the same time so that you can have your population survive. And some are going to get taken by bears, some are going to get taken by wolves, but if there's enough little ones out there, some are going to survive. Then after that, once the cows have been bred, then it kind of returns back into bull groups and cow groups, and you'll get a little bit of sparring after the rut. So the bulls are still kind of in the zone, they're still in the rut thing, but not terribly bad like they are for like right now. And then winter hits, and the name of the game for them is just survival.
Cool. So we're kind of like, you're probably halfway through then. You probably got a few weeks ahead then.
I would think so. Yeah, the last part's going to be like the last or first couple of weeks in October.
And is the foliage changing up there yet, or is it still green with all the rain?
Man, we're full on fall.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Already?
everything is all colored.
Crazy.
The tree outside my window right here is all yellow.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'll put some pictures in the show notes
Yeah. Yeah.
so that everybody can see
Let's.
it.
I had one more for you. It was about. Oh, what are you guys shooting? So we're primarily video right now. No photos for like behind the scenes stuff because you've been teasing me with a few photos of on the camera screen and such. But what are you guys carrying up there to get this video? I see an FX6. Is that behind you, Eric?
Yeah, I've got everything on chargers real quick since the morning. Yeah, so I've got FX6 and like Michael said earlier, the Sigma 60 to 600.
Okay.
So we can kind of, yeah, it's been nice. I had a Tamron 50 to 400 I was using for a little bit. I was trying to go a little bit lighter, but after a week or so of hiking, feel ready to. So I went and grabbed a bigger lens so I could get a little more reach. There's some times where that you could get some nice tight detail shots that I just needed the extra couple 100 millimeters. So yeah, we have those running. We're trying to film the moose activity. The one thing that's been kind of nice is if I see Michael, 20, 30 yards away from me, we're kind of pointed at the same thing, same lens. I can kind of see where his focal length is, and I'll try and, go the opposite way if I can, try and
Right.
give us a couple angles, a couple variety. But yeah, just that and carrying GoPros for some opportunities, trying to film each other so we can show you guys kind of us in action. But we had some pretty good footage too of these moves, so it'll be fun to get that out there.
Yeah, it's hard to pull away from a big moose when you're like, all right, I should get whoever focused on
Yeah,
this, and you're like, I don't know, I can't do it.
yeah.
Uh, it's
I end up
brutal.
doing it when there's no moose in front of us. I'll just say, I'll
Right.
tell Eric, hey, just look like you're shooting.
It's movie magic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we're not still. I'm not shooting stills at all, at all, at all. The
yeah,
only thing
no.
I'll shoot a still with to tease you with is of
Uh,
my iPhone.
yeah,
I'll
I
just take
know.
a picture and just send it to you right away while we're there. Actually, in one of the places we shoot, you still get cell phone signal, which is kind of cool. The other places we shoot, you lose your signal, so you can't
Yep.
share stuff on the spot. But everything is strictly video. The
And
cool thing about the Sony FX6 is that lens, and you guys know more than I do, but that lens just came out
Yeah,
for the Sony with the actual Sony
yeah,
mount,
the E
what, like a
mount.
year
Yep.
ago?
Yeah, not
yeah, I don't have
even.
that
I
one
don't
yet.
think. Yep.
So if you're into wildlife and you're shooting Sony and you're shooting video, it's probably the most versatile lens for wides and tights, and it's made for the camera.
Is that a f5.6 at the 600, or is that
It's
a
4.5 to
6.3? Do you remember?
6.3, 6.3.
Okay. Oh,
Yep.
4.5 at the 60. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yep.
Okay. And then Michael, what are you shooting on?
So I've been using the V Raptor, the red V Raptor, the S35 model, which is kind of cool. It's a little bit lighter than the Helium, which was the previous version, and then the same lens, 60 to 600.
And we're working on an unboxing video too of that we will have up on the YouTube channel as well, right?
Yeah,
At some point.
maybe. Yeah, Brandon and I shot that like last winter when we got the V Raptor when it showed up. Before we ever even opened it, we shot the
Yeah, that
opening
was
of
the
it,
first time you get to
and
see
it's
it.
probably really going to suck. So cut us some slack when you watch it. But we're in my little studio in Denver, and and I probably sound like the biggest dork because I didn't know anything about it, but it is kind of a cool camera. I actually don't like it as much as the Helium, which is the previous version. The biggest thing with wildlife is you want pre-record, and on the Helium, I could go up to 30 seconds pre-record and not worry about it. But on this camera, it's very limited. And they did change the cards. They did change the camera. It is a much higher resolution sensor, so you can't get as much time on the pre-record. I think the highest I can get, and I have to be shooting really like 30 frames a second or 24 frames a second, is I can maybe get 4 seconds out of it.
Whoa. So you got to be on your game.
Yeah, and the problem with that is when you hit pre-record, so it's pre-recording up to 4 seconds, right? So if something's going to happen, you're not just wasting footage. If you're waiting for something to lift its head up, or you're waiting for who knows whatever it is that you're trying to not waste a bunch of digital space with hard drives or your cards or whatever, you hit the button and then you just wait. But what you got to be super careful about is when you hit the button to trigger it, you don't want to shake the camera because that'll come up in your footage.
Yeah, 4 seconds is not enough for that.
No, I used to, when I could go like 10 or 12 seconds, I would count. I'd be like, okay, whatever I'm trying to shoot, it just happened. So I knew I had a 10-second or 12-second pre-roll or pre-record. I would count in my mind to 8 and then I'd hit the button. That way I knew I would get that action without any shake.
Right.
And, I can do it without the shake, but there's so many variables. If where we shoot right now on that, you put the tripod down and it's tundra.
It's terrible.
So you can't find, anytime I find solid ground, because you can in places, you'll find a pad of gravel here and there. I try to set up on that just to get the solid base. But more times than not, you're just on this really spongy tundra. So any little, you try to do a nice smooth pan, it's really difficult. Any of that kind of stuff, you can do it. It just takes a lot of concentration and preparation for it. But so that's one of the downsides to this new camera is you just can't do it or can't pull it off. The other thing that makes it really hard is if you're freezing your butt off, like we have been for the last couple of days. When we get out of the truck at the trailhead, most mornings over the last week, it's been like 38, 39 degrees.
Wow.
So it's already full on, well into fall. So You're sitting there shivering and your camera's like, your footage is like,
right. Well, and on that tundra, you can't even move your feet because it'll shift the tripod too.
Yeah, for sure. And then when you're
Brutal.
like, if you're shooting with other people and they don't understand, that they can't, like someone will come over and want to say, hey, did you see this? And they step right next to one of the legs of your tripod. And then that's, yep.
Right. And then are you using pre-record on yours, Eric?
Yeah.
Or I guess it's called pre-cache on the Sonys.
Yeah. Basically just leaving that running all the time.
And you do
The one interesting thing I found, I think I've got it right around 5 seconds. That's about all I've been used to running with. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might play around with some different things. I've been trying some different settings here and there, and every day I go out and shoot and try something different and find some options that work or things that just don't work and cause issues. So yeah, one interesting thing that we found was that I've got the Sackler Flowtech legs and those big carbon fiber hollow tubes rubbing against the tree sounds a lot like antlers rubbing against a tree, which is not good when they're listening for each other running. So I gotta really tiptoe around through the woods so I don't trigger any reactions. I've been trying to think if I could use some I have this mass loaded vinyl I put on all the walls of my van just to knock out that tinging noise. And I'm thinking whether if I could put some of that on the tripod and just cover it up with some tape or something. And it's shiny silver on the back of it, but I haven't done it yet. I've just been a little more conscious about getting through the trees, not making too much noise.
We found this out the other day because we were sitting there. There was a big bull and he was laying down and we were just off at a distance and just watching him and we basically were just going to wait for him to get up, whether it was 2 hours or 10 minutes or whatever, just waiting for him to do whatever he's going to do. And Eric was not nearby. He was off, I don't know, 50 yards away.
Yeah, I was waiting in an opening because I thought before he bedded down, he might come out to me. So I was just trying to hedge my bets. So
and he opened up his tripod and I heard it. And that bull heard it. And that bull jumped up and took off. And I was like, that sounded just like a bull raking its antlers. And so after the whole thing was over, I told Eric, I was like, hey, you might want to be a little, just because I saw it and I knew for sure that bull was reacting to that sound, because hunters will do that a lot. They'll go out and rake antler or rake trees or whatever to draw the attention of a bull. And his tripod sounds just like it. So.
How funny. Well, we saw that when I was up there when we were doing that gray owl. Remember that jacket that I was wearing? It was that Sitka. It's that quiet material, but it had that weird shh sound that it made. And remember that owl? It would just I moved just a little bit, and that thing honed right in on me.
Yep.
So they're perceptive things, animals.
Yep. Survival of the fittest.
That is cool.
Yeah. So it's been a good time. It's been fun. It's so hard this year. I mean, it's just not like it used to be. We're still getting stuff, but it's just a different, and that's to be expected. I mean, you can't. I think one thing I was thinking about, you have a lot of time to think on these hikes when you're hiking in there. one thing I was thinking about the other day, and I've known this for so many years, and back in the days when I shot stills, is you just, when you get in a good situation, you just want to maximize it to the full. You never run and say, you know what, I didn't get that this year, I'll get it next year.
Yeah.
Because next year it's never
Might
the
not be
same.
there.
Yeah. I'm keep thinking, we all keep talking about it where, God, remember when you could sit up here and have your choice of places to go, and it's not that way at all this year. So just a little like word of wisdom.
It's the Michael's wisdom of the day.
Yeah. Well, take it for
Cherish
what it's worth, but
cherish the moment.
Yep.
yeah, overshoot. Do not undershoot. Overshoot
Yeah,
everything.
space is so cheap now, like cards and hard drive space.
Well,
Just do it.
yeah, Michael, what did you say though? You offloaded footage the other night. What did you have?
Oh, this camera is stupid.
Oh, I know it's filling up this NAS. I can hear it chunking away right now because it's still thinking about whatever's in there.
So the red camera, you can have high quality, medium quality, and low quality. Well, I'm like guy, like if you got high quality, shoot high quality. Why not? But a 2 terabyte card is only 40 minutes of footage
Whoa.
at the high quality. So I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that's kind of dumb. And 2 terabytes. I mean, most people don't go out and shoot 2 terabytes in 2 weeks, and you can shoot it in 40 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I'll do a medium quality. So at medium quality, I only get an hour and 5 minutes or something like that. I don't know exactly what it is, but um, so last year, knowing I was going to shoot all this stuff, I'm like, I have got to come up with a different solution for footage and being able to access this stuff, because you want to do a project and you want to find all this footage that you've got in your archives. It could be spread out over 3 or 4 or 5 different drives. And, on these new computers, you only have like 3 or 4 ports. And then you can, try getting what do they call it? A dock
Yeah.
that will allow you to do more, but then it's going to slow it down. So then you can't edit. So last year, Brendan and I did a lot of research on the NAS drives. And in doing that research, I ended up picking up a drive that was, I don't know, 130 terabytes or something like that. And it had a 10 gigabyte transfer rate. So I'm like, I hope that I could edit right from that drive through the 10 gigabyte Ethernet cable. And it turns out you can. But once I did that, then I told Brandon, I was like, we could set this up where we have one folder on the NAS that if you have a NAS, we can keep the same footage on both these drives, and it does it seamlessly while we sleep, right? Now it's all dependent upon your internet speeds. So if you got too slow going out of my place and slow going into Brandon's place, or vice versa, it's going to be a little bit slower,
Right.
or it could be slow. And if you're transferring 2, 3, 4, 5 terabytes, it could take a while. But it's proven to be a pretty cool. Anytime I shoot anything for our YouTube channel, I have it in a drive that we set up for YouTube. And being here in Alaska, it just sits here and chunks away, and I can hear it throughout the night. And it's putting that same footage on Brandon's computer or Brandon's NAS drive down in Colorado. So it's a pretty cool system.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to upgrade. I only have the 2 bay set up. I do not have it set up as a RAID. I think you have your set up as a RAID, right? For some
Yep.
redundancy. Yep. I just bought a 2 bay. It's I think it's 216s. So I got 32 in total. But I'm gonna have to upgrade at some point because I'd like to. Now that you confirmed we can edit off of the NAS with a 10 gig setup, I'll start doing that for my stuff that I'm shooting commercially. Just because right now I'm using all these little hard drives, and so I have just drives
Yeah.
everywhere. And then I got Western Digital ones, and then I like.
Yeah. And then it's
It's a
like, do I have
mess.
that backed up? Do I have this? Is that there, or is it there? Or
Well, and everyone's experienced this for themselves. Like you go to the camera, right? This happened to me last night. I was down in Colorado Springs. I had this portrait shoot, and I look at the back of the car, and I'm like, "Oh no, I need some space," because I never erase anything. And so I'm like, "Okay, just take it out. I don't know if I've backed it up." And so I swap out cards and put one in there, and it's like the one that I put in there was from our Eagles. And I'm like, "Did I back this up?" can I format this? And I'm like, yes, I can format it. And so it's just like that anxiety of like, okay, here we go. And like you hit the format button, and it's like, are you sure? And you're like, I don't know. And I just couldn't. And so I finally did it, but it's a struggle. So now imagine having that struggle for yourself with your own assets, but then instead of your assets, it's the clients. And you're
Right.
like, I don't know. Can I format it? And so it's turned into a giant procedure. Like I made myself a checklist just because I don't know. It was too much anxiety for me.
And it's getting worse. I mean, the bigger these files get, the more terabytes that you use. I have the NAS and I put everything on the NAS, but I'm still backing up on old traditional, really
Yep.
slow 8 terabyte external drives.
Yep. Because they're pretty cheap right now. Like I just bought one. It was a 14 terabyte. I think it was $120 at Best Buy.
Right. So that's the way to do it. And the NAS is super fast. And yes, you can edit. You got to use the 10 gigabit. So you got to buy a NAS that has the 10 gigabit card in it. And then with my laptop, I couldn't order a 10 gigabyte port. So then I had to buy an external 10 gigabit something USB-C. I can't even remember what it's called, but it does work. And the transfer speed. So the other day, I was transferring footage when I got back, and I think it was 1 terabyte out of a card, a red camera card. And if I have my Wi-Fi on my computer, it defaults to that. And I didn't notice that, right? So I put in the card and I said, put it on the NAS. And it was immediately, I knew it said it'll take 4 hours to copy this terabyte. So I'm like, oh, geez. So I hit stop and I erased all the, phantom
Yep.
files on there to get it all fixed. Then I turn off the Wi-Fi and I go through the cable. So to transfer that 1 terabyte over the 10 gigabit was 28 minutes.
Holy cow.
So that's the difference, 4 hours to 28 minutes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
It's
you're
well
talking
worth it.
high resolution 8K red footage.
Yep.
Awesome.
And I can edit. Now it's not like seamless.
You gotta let it render. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do something to a file, like if you're going to color it, or if what was I doing the other day? I was doing something to, I'm shooting a 17:9 aspect ratio. And if I'm on a 4K timeline using the GoPro as the dictator of what this timeline's size is going to be, then 17:9 gives you black on the top and the bottom. Mm-hmm. So I just go up like 0.07% and it covers everything. So when I do that, sometimes I have to wait just, I don't know, 5 or 10 seconds before I can play the footage. But I'm totally fine with that.
Can you play color graded footage?
Yep.
Awesome.
I can't color grade anything to save my life. That's what you guys are for, but you can do it.
I'm not that good at. I use all the tools and then I just use my eye, so I'm not using anything scientific.
Eric's in the process of
we'll try.
Eric's going to be our guy. He's, being a pharmacist and being very detail oriented when it comes to, doing that, what you have to do. I think he's our guy for color.
He's like 1 milligram of red, 2 milligrams of green.
We'll see how the test run goes first.
That's funny. Yeah.
So Brandon, what were you saying about?
Well, and then you got to have a color corrected monitor.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Brandon. You were talking about the GoPro issues with your corporate thing. What was that about?
Oh gosh. Well, two things. So the GoPro. One of the mistakes that Michael and I had when we were doing our remotes was like, and I don't even know how it got introduced, but at one point in time, there was like a timer set. Remember that, Michael, where we would set it and then it would start counting down from like 30 minutes, or it was 60 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
But there was a timer that was set and it would count down no matter if it was recording or if it was just in like monitoring mode. And then we rectified it and we got it fixed. And the way we fixed that is we just built an entire new setting and then scanned it and it seemed to work. Well, I had been messing with it for those eagles. And remember, I crawled up on that dead otter and then I placed the GoPro and we used it for the remote when that eagle came in to eat and scavenge on that one otter. Well, I haven't touched a GoPro since then, but I got this job, and I can't. I can talk about the shoot in a little bit, but I can't talk about really. I can't talk about it in detail just because I'm under NDA for it.
Right.
But I was at an airport, and so everything has to go through the traffic control, which is in the tower when you're on this taxiway that I was shooting on, and it's an active taxiway. I was running two cameras. It was just me, and then we had GoPros attached to a taxiing airplane. Okay, so lots of moving parts, high stakes, and it's on an active taxiway. So you set up a GoPro. Well, I had two GoPros just because I was like, two is one and one is none.
Right.
So I set up two GoPros, and I'm so happy that I did. One of the GoPros retained one of those timer settings where it would shut off after 30 minutes. And so at one point in time, like I got everything that I needed. I ran out there because there was a shot that I needed from the middle of the taxiway. So I'm in like bright green. I'm on a radio, I'm carrying a tripod. At the same point in time, the little quick release, I used the quick release with a Arca Swiss attachment on the bottom of my FX3. That had come loose. So the FX3 falls off. So the FX3 is on the taxiway. I'm trying to run to the airplane. I get out to the airplane and the GoPro is just off. And it's like at the top of the wing, so I can't do anything about it. So I was like, all right, well, the other one's recording, so just send it. And of course, the client's like, hey, did you get that other wing? And I'm like, no, it must have overheated. I told him, I was like, no, like, here's what happened. He's like, oh, that's okay. Like, we got the other one, right? I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, just a bonehead. And I'm so, like, anymore, I'm still so good about the night before. I'm like, all right, what am I going to use? Like, set it all up, make sure they're like cleared, all formatted, charged. Like, and that GoPro, like, it was a last minute thing. I just threw it in the truck and I was like, oh, this might be a cool shot. And I didn't test it. And so I guess my little tip there is if you're going to use something, even if you're not planning on using it, if it's going to go in your kit, you better make sure it's ready to go. So that was my mistake. By the way, the FX3 survived the fall. It had a cage on it. It's just a little scratched. Nothing wrong with it. A few
But
mistakes
that's
were
a
made.
good point. I mean, it's like go through your stuff. That stuff happens to me all the time. And it's like you're trying to do with today's budgets.
Yeah.
You don't have 17 assistants running around. You
No.
don't even have one assistant in
No.
most cases. It's you, and you've got to manage, up to 5, 6, 7 different cameras on a shoot.
Right.
And it's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of moving parts. Even with it, what Eric and I are doing, we're doing GoPros. We're trying to do audio.
Yep.
We're running video cameras, and it's always something. The other day, I was trying to capture nat sound of these moose. So I try to predict where the animals might go, and then I'll set up a microphone in like on a tree bough of an evergreen tree or a spruce tree, set it there, and then hit record. I did that like 3 times, and the moose never went the right way. And then it's not, it's got to be fairly close for this microphone to work very well.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess my point is it's just, I don't know. I don't know how you can keep up with everything.
Well, and I can't, like, that's where I'm at. I've had so many shoots that I had a shoot the night before, and so I just charged up the batteries, dumped the footage the night before, swapped out new cards, but because the prior job hadn't been finished, I didn't want to wipe those cards because that's a third place that it's backed up then, right? So I have the hard drive that it's stored on that I'm editing off of, which is an SSD, old like plug-in just HD or a standard like spinning disk style hard drive. And then if I can keep the SanDisk, that's a third place that it's backed up that's not in the same location if the house burns down, right? And so like that's how paranoid I am about this stuff. But it's just one of those things. Like I was going too fast and it bit me. So
Yep. And when you're playing in this corporate world, a lot of things we shoot don't happen twice, right? So you
yeah, like
have to
I
make sure
can't get
you
a
got
plane
it.
to drive down a taxiway again. It was so
Right.
much money just to start the plane. So
Right. Right. So yeah, you definitely got to have your stuff together, and you just doing what you're doing is awesome, right? Because you are
Oh, it's
just
so much fun.
working pretty much nonstop all summer long. You've been pretty busy. So,
Yeah, I had grand plans to come up there and do the moose route with you guys, and I was going to come up and get the pikas with you all, and I was like, "Sorry, Michael, I'm not even making it up in September now." Um,
right.
so it's just
But
been brutal.
brutal in a good way.
Oh yeah,
I
I
mean, you're
mean,
making
making money,
money,
and
you're
I'm learning. Like
learning
the
a ton.
learning has been. You don't know what you don't know, and you told me that when you
Yep.
started this. You're like, "Well, you just don't know what you don't know," because I was like, "What do I need to know?" And you're like, "You'll figure it out." Well, and the other thing is like you think you have everything that you need in the beginning, and you're like, I got a camera, I got a microphone, like let's go do some stuff. I went to that shoot. I had 4 Pelican cases full of junk, and like that was no, we had no voice, so no audio, nothing. It was just tripods and cameras and clamps and gaff tape and all the stuff that you never think about packing when you're going into the woods. And then the very next day I went and I photographed an interview, and so it was 2 people talking, so I was running 2 lav setup, which thankfully the FX6 is awesome in that regard. It records 6 channels of audio with the handle, and so I was running a a boom mic through an XLR. I was running the lav mics through a transmitter and receiver that plugs into the multi-interface shoe on top, so I was getting both channels there. And then I was running scratch audio just from the internal one. And then I was running a secondary backup shotgun mic on the FX3 from the secondary camera. And it worked out flawless. But to the same point, like 2 cameras, audio levels. I'm having to ask all the questions to the interviewer. And you don't want, like, this is the worst way to do an interview, right? It's like, so where were you on the night of the 33rd? And it's just like, dear, because I feel like when people that aren't trained in to speak to cameras, not that any of us are, but like as soon as you put a camera, and these things aren't small, right? And so you put this camera in front of them, and they just like, I'm Brandon Day, and I own a store, and it just it's better to offset them, right? Just talk directly to them. But when you do that, you can't monitor your cameras because you're trying to maintain eye contact, and it just turns into like a nightmare. And so I
Yeah.
finally broke down and like hired an assistant for this last one that I did, but then that cuts out of the margin. And
Well, I think though too, that's what you're learning too, is by doing all these jobs is, I think initially you did a lot of stuff where you're like, I just want to get the work, so I'm going to do it fairly cheap.
yep,
And then you get plenty of those jobs, and then you realize, you know what, I'm
just
running
not worth
myself
it.
ragged. It's not worth it. If I lose a job because I'm a little bit more expensive, so be it.
Yep,
But there's going to be the ones that are like, yeah, we get it. We
yep,
we get that you want an assistant. We get, and you build the budget in there, and then once you just keep ratcheting up and figuring out the sweet spot where you fall into place, and you're able to produce really awesome work, and you're also able to not have to think of every possible thing. You got someone there to help out. It just goes so much more smooth, and then your stuff gets highlighted more and used more, and
right.
it's just that building thing. And that's what you went through over the last year, is just
Yeah, and
getting
I'm
that.
still building. And I mean, I've been reading on my off time, and it's 3 years of building to get first, if you can even survive, because most businesses fail that are small businesses. And then it's 3 years before most entrepreneurs start making money just because you're putting, and I can attest to that. I'm putting everything back into the business right now, whether it's advertising or equipment. And so it's just how long will my wife keep me around while I spend all my money? But she's awesome and like wildly supportive. But still, I mean, it's incredible with a family kid like trying to run a business and aftercare. Like there was a gig that came up, they needed a driver, and it was like, well, you're gonna be gone 2 weeks. And we were gonna make it work, but I mean, you get those calls last minute. It's like, all right, what are you doing in the next 2 weeks? So, but it's
Well,
cool.
and what he means by a driver is, I had a guy call me and say, "Hey, can you go do this?" And I'm like, No, I can't." So I said, "I bet Brandon can," and he's driven race cars and films a lot of race cars. And I was like, if it involves driving, Brandon would be
Yeah,
perfect. So, but it was I think I called you the day before they wanted you there.
Yeah, you were like, you're
So
gonna have to get on tomorrow.
yeah, so you're trying, and what he was driving was a big gimbal on a truck. So
Right.
it's not like you're just driving.
Right.
He's got to know what the camera operator that's running this big fancy gimbal is. You know, he's got to position this camera. Now you can move that camera, fine, but if he makes it as easy as possible on the camera operator, then the camera operator is going to be able to focus on what the shot is and not constantly trying to move the camera to compensate for what you're doing as a driver. So it was more than just a driver. You're almost like a second AC
Right.
or an AC to do it, but it involves, you know, maneuvering a vehicle.
Well, and then you got clearance issues, and because you don't want to run it into a power line if it's lifted, like it's just
right. It's just all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It would have been perfect, but that, yeah, it's totally last minute. And
Yeah,
everything,
it was
a lot of
budget
these
call,
jobs
yeah.
are like that. A
Yeah.
lot of the corporate clients I have are like that too, and you know that because they'll
Yep.
call us last minute and say, hey, can you be in Toledo,
Right.
Ohio tomorrow
Right.
at 4:00?
Yeah. Yep.
So anything else that we wanted to talk about on this podcast?
I just got one thing. Is that a new hat?
Dude, this is
Michael?
the one. This is the original one.
Oh, that was the blue one?
Yeah.
It's not blue anymore.
I have sweat so much in this. I won't wear anything else because I'm like, I'm just going to ruin it. Every day when we hike out of this place, I am drenched.
Yeah.
And it's been so cold that I'm wearing like long underwear. And I mean, I don't want to turn it into complain.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's this. I haven't even tried to smell it. I'm sure it's terrible.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's still the same one. The ones that we ordered in the middle, you know, Eric's wearing that style.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because those are all too big, but he's got a big old melon, so it was perfect for him. And then the new ones that you just got me that you had sent up here that I still need to pay for, those I didn't want to mess up any one of those because I'm just like, no, we hike out of this. We call this last hill that we hike out Cardiac Hill. It sucks, you know, because when you go out, I always like to do the hiking first. And when you come back, if you could come downhill, it's like, that's perfect. But this is reverse. This is like you hike down to get to where we're going. And then the last thing you do before you get to the trailhead is it's this massive uphill Cardiac Hill climb that is just no fun. Yeah.
But no, I think that's it. So I think the next video will be the Moose Rut one, right?
We'll put up the Moose Rut one. You know, this whole YouTube thing, I was like, man, this is going to be so easy. We're just going to go out and whip out these videos. And I don't know how many you and I have started that have never got completed. And then I thought, okay, well, the moose thing will be easy, right?
There's like 5 sitting in the NAS right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, daily I'll just do a walking out, say, well, this is what I'm hoping we can get today. And then we'll shoot it. And then maybe try to talk to the camera as we're shooting it if time allows. And then as you're hiking out, maybe recap the day and bada boom, bada bing, you got a video. I have failed every day somewhere. I'm starting to edit all these and I'm like, okay, well, that's really good for a third of it. Everything else is like terrible. What am I going to do? So then my fix is a walk and talk that tells how bad I screwed up. And here's just a mishmash of highlights from the last 4 or 5 days. That's how I was going to use it because I don't know anyone else to tie it all together. And time's just passing by. I mean, I don't know. I think I finally got it to a point where I can do what my plan was, but it's kind of goes with what you're talking about. It's the preparation. It's like how much, you know, when I watch a YouTube video, I want to be immersed in it. I want to see the behind the scenes. I want to see the cool footage. I want to see everything. And I just wasn't doing that.
Well, but there's a whole thing of like, it's still a visual media, right? Where we want to see like a beginning, a middle, and end. And there's so many times when you're done where it's like, well, that was really cool. All right, see you later.
Or you say that to yourself and you don't record anything.
Right, you don't record it, right.
Yeah. And that's been the main problem is I don't have anything. Yeah. And then it'd be like something I'll say to myself, okay, you forgot to do this the other day. Why don't you just do it on the hike out tonight? And then it's not all here. Yeah. It's like I miss it or I speak about something that I don't have any footage for or it's It's the struggle bus.
Okay,
And
last one, and then I'll let you guys go. Best thing you guys have filmed during this moose rut?
ooh,
I mean, I think that GoPro that you outlined earlier is going to be pretty awesome.
yeah, which sucks because it's not even on the cool camera. This is on a GoPro.
I know.
But it is going to be like, yeah.
The best camera is the one you got with you.
Well, and I was, yeah. Yep. No, I think that's, for me, that's it. And it
What
was
about you,
total
Eric?
luck.
I mean, it's all been pretty exciting to be able to not have to go to work Monday through Friday and see day after day. It's all been one big highlight. I mean, one
Yeah.
year
Let me just interject
seeing
here
these,
real quick,
yeah.
Eric. Eric would send me pictures. Like when he was in his job, I'd send him a
You would
behind the
send me
scenes shot.
pictures. Yeah.
I would send him something from Hollow Bay or whatever, wherever I was shooting. And then he would send me a picture of his computer.
That's
And
what I've
Just
been
my
doing.
and it would
desk.
be like, I hate my life. That would be his text.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now
So
you've been doing that to me.
yeah. No, just seeing the big bulls and them getting fired up and just taking off running. I mean, it's like, Clydesdale is just tearing through the meadows and chasing each other off. I think
That's
that's
awesome.
stuck with me. And then,
And you've got some of that filmed?
yeah, definitely been able to
Man,
utilize some autofocus that Michael doesn't get to do.
I know.
But yeah, that's been pretty cool. Just to
That's
see
awesome.
that big animal in power and just tearing through there. A lot of times they're just chasing off the little bulls. They get fired up, or the cows are irritating them, and they'll run each other off. And the cows will fight. They'll get pissed at each other, and they go up and put their front legs and hit each other. And we watched a few of those. Those are pretty entertaining moments.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I that's another thing. It's like, do you start these videos? I mean, you're playing against the YouTube algorithm, right? So you got to get people to stick around for 60 seconds or whatever it is to please the algorithm. And it's like, you don't want to start out with just a walk and talk because who cares about that, right?
You
They're
need
gonna
a
be like, oh
hook.
yeah, so what? You're huffing and puffing and you're carrying a pack. Poor you. You're out in the woods. Just shut up and
Yeah,
deal
that's
with
your
it,
bad
right?
decision. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, okay, do I have enough cool shots to actually do a cool intro for every video that we do?
Right.
So, do you need 10, pretty awesome shots that people are like, wow, I never saw that before, or that was shot a little bit differently and that's kind of cool, or I don't know. I think any year past it would have been super easy to do just because there's a lot more, a more target rich environment. But this year it's gonna be a little bit tougher. But I think we'll be able to do it. I think we'll be able to. I think we can do. I think we could get a whole YouTube video out of just this GoPro thing, and then we'll be able to use some of this footage to help finish the one that we started with the 3 ways to use a GoPro in the woods or for wildlife. So,
Yeah, because we got a bear. My parents had a bear. So I have a GoPro set up there.
oh,
But
good.
again, it happened at night and
Oh, yeah,
nothing.
yeah,
So, and it was a big old sow. She was probably 350, 400 pounds. She was huge.
that's awesome.
But
Well, and that's one thing we've been running into a lot is the other day we were sitting there just glassing and there was a black bear up behind us and there was 2 brown bears on the other side of the valley across from us. So there are bears around and the chances of getting a bear on one of these GoPros it's the potential's there. I don't know if it'll happen, but that could be kind of cool too.
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So what's up for you next? I mean, are you doing,
Me?
yeah, this next week?
Oh, goodness. I have 2 video shoots and 1 portrait job. The portrait jobs are just soul sucking work for me. It's just, but it pays the bills.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, like I'm pretty good at it, is what I'm learning. Like every
You know what
portrait,
you are, and everybody needs to know this, is you are a people person. And I think you obviously have the talent behind the camera, right? But just having that people perspective and just that whole ability to bring the anxiety way down and just have a good time with it. I think that's where your success is at, is you're just able to make people feel really
Oh
comfortable, and
yeah,
it just
like
makes it so much easier.
yesterday at the shoot, like as I was leaving, the kids are like giving me hugs and high
Right,
fives. I'm like, well,
exactly.
see you later,
That's you.
guys. Like,
That is you.
yeah. So, well, and like what I'm learning with the pictures is there's so many people, they look good, like when they edit their pictures. Let me say that again. So, what I'm finding is there's a lot of photographers that edit really well, but when it comes to like flesh tones, they manipulate the colors so much that it bothers me. Like I'm not a big person to change the skin tone, right? Like I'm brown. I want to remain brown. My wife is like very light skinned. Like that's how it looks. And every time we've hired a photographer, they just throw like the what I call like the golden wheat field onto it, right? Where like the sun's in the corner and you're walking through a wheat field and everything's great. But what happens is it turns me like yellow because I have a very brown pigmentation in my skin, right? Which I'm so tan by the way right now because I've been out in the sun like I don't know 4 days a week, and I always forget sunscreen, so I'll probably have like sunspots at some point. But yeah, I don't change those tones, and I think people are enjoying that from a portrait perspective. So I don't know, but yeah, I have 2 video shoots and then one portrait one, but they're like not around Denver. One's in Longmont, the other one's in Firestone. Those are both the video ones, and then the portrait one's down in the Springs. So I'm gonna have to buy a beater.
Yeah, for sure. Do that. But I mean, you're just a huge success story for the last year of going from
Oh yeah,
not
I
a
had
lot of stuff to now
nothing.
you're just like 2 to 3 jobs every week, which is amazing.
It's been tough though. Like this year alone, well, not this year. So on a 12-month, if we start now till next year, I have around $25,000 budgeted for just advertising. And so it's not, you just don't start a business and say like, I'm going to go be a videographer or photographer, and the next day you're hired. Like it's a very, I didn't get hired consistently until June, really.
Right.
Otherwise, I was doing like little one-off jobs, and then all of a sudden it was just every week it was just one after another, and I've been turning down jobs just because I can't do 3 video jobs a week. It's too much on it because I'm editing everything as well,
Right.
and I could ramp up and I could start bringing on an editor, which I will after I learn what I need to on the editing side. I'm actually, when you edit your stuff, and we've talked about this before, Michael, when you edit your own stuff that you shoot, you learn where you're deficient. And if you want to know how bad you are at video, go edit your own work, and you'll learn like, oh, I didn't get any wides, or oh, I didn't get any medium shots. I just got wides and tights. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I need to do more of that. And sometimes you don't have time for it because, like this last gig, they were like, you have 2 hours, but you need to do an interview. Well, interviews take 60 minutes, and then they wanted drone work, and so I had to get drone work and B-roll done in like 40 minutes after we had packed up stuff, and it was just a freaking blur. But
Mm-hmm.
we did it because I had the drone guy going while I was inside, and then I handed him the gimbal when he was like, "Okay, I'm done with the battery," and I was like, "That's fine." And I handed him the gimbal, and I was like, "All right, you go do the inside. That way, I get a different perspective on it." And he unfortunately failed at that because he didn't know how to run autofocus, and so it's just like blurry half the time. But it's fine. That's a whole nother thing of hiring. It's so hard to find good people right now. I've been
Yeah.
Well,
through multiple different people because there's one guy, Travis, but he was on vacation for this shoot. He was in
right.
Austria. Otherwise, I would have like he was a no brainer, right? Because he knows how to shoot and he knows how to edit. But he was off having a good time in Austria, and so I had to find a different person, and it's just
Not good.
not not good.
But I think you're so spot on with the whole, if you want to improve your shooting, try to edit your stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because once you, and I can tell you, I've been doing this for a lot of years. I still, I need to constantly look at my stuff. And I don't do it enough these days. I, take it for granted. But just the other night when I was trying to put these YouTube things together, I'm like, you know what? I keep talking about how beautiful it is. And I haven't taken the time to shoot one scenic shot of just beautiful color or whatever. And it's
Yep.
just that whole thing is, it's not that I can't do it. It's not that, you just get so wrapped up and you're so focused on, oh, I just got to get this really cool thing of these moose or whatever, you just pass it by. And then there's a time where you do have time to do it. Just do it. Eric's actually been really good at it. I've been watching him, and he'll take the downtime to shoot a time lapse where, you got constant clouds moving through the mountains up here. And so he can just get a really cool time lapse that'll bridge a gap or make a transition that we need in a video. And, but that therein lies the beauty of the FX6 too, right? He can just click on a little ND filter and bada boom, bada bing. I can't shoot the clouds because I have to go put an ND on.
You have to throw a different
Then
filter in.
Turns into something, and he's like, I don't. Then what happens if the moose does something and I need to go back to a clear filter? And so, but definitely if you want to improve your video.
Well, and something that's helped me, so audio is huge for these things. And I'll go on the set, and while I'm setting up, I'll just close my eyes for 30 seconds to a minute and just listen. Like, what am I hearing that I need to capture that's going to be part of this, right? And so I was at an ice cream shop, right? So there's the fan from the fridge. There's like usually there's kids in ice cream shop, right? Like, what should an ice cream shop sound like instead of just this dude sitting there talking? And it helps so much because then you start thinking about, I need to also get like the fridge with the cakes in it, whatever they're sitting at eating, like the plastic spoons, and all of a sudden, like in the woods, right? Like you talked about rain. Where's the rain collecting on the foliage? What does it sound like against a leaf? Like, what does it sound like when you brush up against a piece of grass that's wet along your like pants? And there's so much, and you could spend years filming it, recording it, and it still wouldn't have everything. It's
Oh,
incredible.
you're exactly right. Yeah, a lot of times I find myself pulling my phone out and just putting on the voice recorder, and I'll just, if you hear a moose whining or something, you hit record. If you don't get it, at least you tried. If you get it, then yeah, you have that extra little bonus that
Right.
just brings that video to life.
Well, like that. So we have the American Dipper that we're still working on, right? Because there's one more sequence that maybe will happen later, it sounds like. But you guys got that call, right? By
Yep.
just going back out there and that was that you, Eric, that got that?
No, it was another friend. Great.
Oh, that was Raymundo.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
he got it. And he just, totally by luck. I mean, that guy just lucked right into it.
Awesome.
We could start a whole story with that
right,
too.
Right.
But yeah, I think hopefully that's what we're going to do in this podcast, though, is all these little trials and tribulations and things we deal with all the time. Just share that stuff. And, those times when I get back to Denver, I'm sure I'll be working a lot with Brandon. We're going to Florida to do a shoot in October, and then I'm sure he'll have something that I'll help him with. And any of that stuff that we do, we'll just be able to share on the ones that we don't have to sign an NDA. We can just share those things that we run up against, and hopefully it's a learning opportunity as much as it is entertaining.
Right. It's funny after it happens, after you like deliver it. It's not so fun when it's happening on
No, it's
location.
stressful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very stressful.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, y'all. Well, I think for a first podcast, this has been pretty awesome.
Yeah, let us know.
Survived it.
We're gonna do this visually. We're gonna do it audibly, right? So you're gonna see it on Spotify, everywhere where a podcast is. But then we're also gonna drop it visually on YouTube.
Yep.
So let us know in the comments what you think. If there's anything we should cover that we haven't covered, anything that you liked, anything you hated, that really helps us out. And then
just let it play through, even if you don't watch it. Just hit play on your TV at home, and just when you go to work, just play them all for us.
Yeah, just everything. We hired you for that.
You know how you can go on your TV and you can go to a channel and you just hit play all? For all my peeps that I know that have YouTube channels, when I leave for the day, I might just set my Fire Stick. I'll just go to YouTube. I'll like Moose Man. I'll go to play all and just let them. I did it on your channel, Brandon. I would just hit play all.
Put it on for the pets. Dogs love Truth and Legend.
Yep.